I have something that I have to talk about extremely seriously at this point. And interestingly enough, it was Stan who brought it up tonight. And first of all, it concerns Rule 13. I don't know if you all know what that's about or not, but that's when we make a decision and we want to reconsider. And it can only be done at the immediate meeting after the meeting that you made the decision on, and it can only be done by a member who has voted in the majority. Did I get that correct?
Yes, sir. Okay.
We made an awfully big decision, and the more research I do into it, and again, Mr. Johnston was right in several occasions that I said it looked to me at that point that we were going to fall off the cliff. Since in discussions with the city manager and seeing what, I don't even want to say potentially, what has to happen if we continue on that path, it would be very, 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 the term I would use is disastrous, but it would be very difficult on everybody in the city. That includes the citizens and staff, because we would not be able to afford the type of insurance we have. We would have to go from gold to, what was it, what color?
Silver.
There are, according to the Affordable Care Act, the levels of care range from bronze to silver to gold, and platinum is the highest. And that's based on the level of payment that the employer provides to the employee. Our current level of care is at 84% provided by the city, which is a gold plan. Staff has asked our consultant to evaluate what a silver plan would look like in order to decrease the debt to the city.
It's inevitable that we would go down on there. What we do go up on is the percentages that have to come out of our working capital each year grow. And again, as far as I can see, it's absolutely unsustainable. I think some of us were trying to help the staff, and that's fine. And as I told you before, I'm in that. So whatever I'm saying, I'm talking against my own financial situation, but it's the right thing to do. There are other things about it that will be disastrous to us, is we borrow money, and we borrow big amounts of money, and our rating goes through the floor, and that's the part I was saying would fall off a cliff. When that happens, the only way you get a loan is like everybody else. If you've got a bad credit rating, you pay more for the loans. And and that money is just money we just lose. Period. It goes in a bank, and not to the places we need that money to go to. There's so many reasons that I don't want to go into them all now, but I beseech, I choose that word carefully, one of you who are in the majority to let us talk about this again and make sure in all of your minds whether we're doing the right thing or not. What can be done is a Rule 13 tonight. We don't have to discuss it tonight. We can discuss it at the next meeting and give staff a chance, although they've prepared a lot for this already. But I just feel it's essential for us to make sure that what we're doing won't, as far as I can see, eventually it'll bankrupt the city, and those people with pensions may not get them at all, depending on how long it takes to do that. But we've gone from from, what do we put on this? Go around $45 million to the future
Sir, under the previous accounting standards, the city had a accrued debt of $43 million. Upon lifting the cap for Tier 1 and 2, that debt went to $59 million. And then, in addition to the cap being raised, the accounting standards have also changed, which have created an estimated $74.5 million in debt to be recorded.
Now that's put on our books for the future, but we have to give out each year a percentage more of our working capital to meet the requirements. And again, I'd like to hear from everybody that wants to talk, certainly, but I really would appreciate, and I think eventually the city of Titusville and the staff will realize that we're doing something that we have to do. There really isn't a choice. Well, there is always a choice, I guess, but it's not a good one. Member Stokel.
Yep. I know I can't make a motion for it, but I would agree with you. And again, those things, plus I said at the last meeting, and my fear is that the people that are needing this, the retirees that are actually needing this health care benefit, my fear is, as we're now looking at other plans, moving forward, the retirees are going to end up paying now, regardless. So what's going to happen, I mean, if you just look at this from a financial standpoint, you're doing your own business budget, whatever it may be, we are going to offer less plans that we would offer our current employees, plus now that we have to offer that same thing to the retirees. We don't have to fund it, but we have to offer it, and we have chosen to fund it. They will get that new plan with the option then to buy up. So they're, instead right now, with a $700 cap, they're not paying anything. We don't know at this time how much it will go up to, but you could say it goes up to $900. They're now paying $200 a month if we had that cap on. My fear is, as we move forward with this no cap and we're trying to find this money and we're trying to budget and do our fiduciary responsibility, they will be offered a silver plan, and the ones that really need it, the retirees that don't have another job, are on limited income and need good benefits, they're either going to pay for it by purchasing the additional plan to get the gold level care, so they're having a monthly payment, or they'll pay with it with their deductible, with their less plan, maybe even not have access to as good of a doctor because they feel like they can't afford it, and therefore their health is going to suffer. And that's I can't, in addition, the financial aspect concerns me greatly, but even coming from it as just wanting to do what's right to the retirees, that's my fear too. So that's kind of where I'm coming at it with this, so.
Look at it this way, if one of you will do that, we get to talk about it. If you still feel the same way you voted the last time, you just vote the same way again and we'll have the same result. But you may get a different feeling on it. We were all under a lot of pressure from a lot of people out there. You know, they had the issue and kept going about it. And this goes back years because it was brought up even when I was on staff, frankly, the fact of whether that was a promise or not. And as the city attorney said in the last meeting, there's a difference between a policy and a contract. And I'm sure you know that, don't you?
I know that, yes.
And what was presented to us was a policy, and that's the point that our former city attorney made a special trip in after he was retired to point out that was policy. It was never a promise. And policies do change, and they've changed to the military, they've changed to many, many companies because it's a different world. And that policy is just unsustainable at this point. So I really plead with one of you to make that Rule 13 this evening. Vice Mayor.
Sure. Thank you, Mayor. And number one, because it's a large issue, I appreciate that both your concern is warranted, and at least asking if we would be willing to discuss that. So thank you for bringing it back up. Same thing, Member Stokel. I will share with you at this point, I believe that we are going to have a liability, whether it's 74, 45, so on and so on. It is a very large number anyway, you cut it. And I would be more apt to not moving forward in bringing that specific, to go under the guise of Rule 13. What I would be willing and I would welcome is, as a strategic plan over the next 20 years, what are alternatives to addressing this number? I would be willing to look at that, and to solely look at it as a binary choice of either this is the one way we do it or we do nothing. I think is where we're at right now. And from course of action, I can understand that may be the ultimate solution. But I would definitely be willing to say, okay, if we don't do that, we still have this very large liability out there. So then what are we going to do for the next 20 years to deal with that? Or what's the plan moving forward? And that's one thing. I know that a change in coverage is a step, but I don't look at that as, from a council perspective, as a policy-driven, holistic approach to how are we going to tackle this elephant. Alternatively to what I think always boils down to a singular solution. So I would definitely welcome a conversation on what are the options on how to move forward with it, not inclusive of what we've already voted on. The second is really the only way that I think I would move forward with doing a Rule 13 or so on and so on. I was serious as a heart attack when I was talking about remove the CRA and use that money. And the rationale is I understand that it's not all of the money.
It's nothing.
Okay. Oh, but it does two things. There is money there, and it would unrestrict it to be applied somewhere else. And so...
No, it goes back to the taxpayer. I mean, goes back to the county.
Sure.
Sorry, not the taxpayer, the county. We get this much of it. The county and the school board and everybody else gets, well, it's the county actually. And
Correct.
it's even that is not enough to affect this one way or the other. So you don't understand CRAs.
Okay. So I guess where I'm falling from that, I believe I do have an understanding of CRAs. And I guess it falls within the rationale of if we are at fall off the cliff mode and everything is not on the table equally, then to entertain a conversation of fall off the cliff, I think that more needs to be on the table. And that was just one proposal of what I think there probably are more proposals available if afforded the opportunity to discuss it. So,
In my opinion, if we wait 20 years or 10 years, it's too late. It's got to start here. It is an elephant, and it has to start getting one bite at a time, as they say about elephants. And I believe it has to start now. But again, if we have the ability to discuss it at this meeting, if you don't agree with it after we have the meeting, you just continue voting the way you did. But please ask some staff about CRAs and let them lay it out for you, because you got some idea that I don't understand. I've been doing CRAs again for quite some time. Member Nelson.
Mayor, I don't have a problem with discussing it at some point, but before I do that, I wanted some time to go by, because I think we have some answers as to what impact we have on a bond rating, what it's doing to our interest rates. Is the idea of doing a silver tier going to across the board? What is that impact going to be? And there were a lot of questions that were unknown. And when I asked Bridget she didn't have the answers, and Bridget's a smart cookie. So I'm not ready to readdress it currently, but I'm not saying I'm never going to readdress it, because I will. I think that may
But-
come up.
Bridget understands the fundamentals, and she
Correct.
will tell you it's disastrous, because she told me it's disastrous, what we're doing. Because all of that has to be put on the books now.
Correct.
And if we did what is still possible for us to do, and it can only be done at the next meeting, you understand that, right?
Correct.
Then
Well,
we
let me-
will have the time to look at it and think about it and determine, now, within, a reasonable amount of time this year. I don't know how long we can delay a decision. I'll have to ask we'll ask
So
the
we
city
ask-
attorney that.
Asked to turn around and say, let's reconsider it, basically in October.
How long can we delay a final decision with Rule 13? Do we have to make the decision at the next meeting?
Strictly under Rule 13 or motion for consideration would need to be dealt with at the meeting at which the vote was taken or the meeting immediately following, which is this meeting. That being said, there's other types of motions, a motion to rescind. In the future, if
Right.
council felt like they wanted to rescind that action completely, that is a different motion that doesn't have the same restriction. If at some point council said, we want to rescind that previous action and move in a different direction, that's a motion that does not have the same restriction as the motion for reconsideration.
But
That could be
gets-
made at a future date.
That gets more difficult, in my estimation, as time goes on, and I'm not sure whether it'll ever get done at that point, and then it's all on the books. If we had made the motion last time, as I understand it, and City Manager, you helped me with this one, we didn't have to, then we wouldn't have had to put the original 43 million on, is that correct?
That's incorrect, sir. The Gatsby 75 change will record any of our debt. So the goal of Gatsby 75 is to show the actual financial position of the city. So what will be recorded is the estimated 74.5 million now.
Oh, the whole amount?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so that puts us in a terrible position right there.
Yeah, it may. That was my question. Excuse me. That was my question. I've asked several people outside of the city, and nobody seems to really have an answer for that. So that's my problem.
Well, okay, let somebody else talk. Member Stokel?
Yep, and that's kind of where I guess I was going with the $700 cap. Still, the retirees would not be paying anything this year, probably not next year as well, and that would buy us some time, therefore not having to record that unfunded liability. I know both numbers, it's a high number either way you look at it, but still, obviously, one number, a higher number is going to make it worse. And me personally, if I record $20,000 worth of debt versus 40, I mean, it's going to hurt me much more. And I just feel more comfortable as a council if we were to just have that on there. The retirees are still getting their coverage while we kind of figure that out, and we're not. I don't know. We don't know right now what that is going to do for our bond rating and recording that much unfunded liability. It makes me extremely nervous looking at how high it is and putting ourselves in a situation where we don't know. And I just don't think that I could do that responsibly. That's kind of where I'm coming from and where I think the $700 cap would buy us some time. So.
Member Diesel?
I don't disagree with you, Member Stokel, on the $700 cap and buy you some time and all that stuff. But I do recall even saying when we were doing this that, we may need to readdress it. And I asked the staff, because, I got to be honest with you, I said this before and I'll say it again. When we very first did this, the hardcore number that was out there was $54,000 to get that done for the year. And then I started hearing this word actuary. I didn't hear that before the meeting or at the meeting. So we went with it. Then the actuary came up in numbers like whatever the numbers were, 11 million, 19 million. And then even then, I hear the term estimates. And then I ask, well, if we wait a year, would we be able to tell if the actuary is coming around? And again, I keep hearing that term, I don't know. I don't know. I'm not getting any hard numbers and hard facts. And don't misunderstand me, Mayor. I respect everything you're saying. You have an awful lot of experience, and I respect that. So I hear you. I'm listening to that. I'm not ready to step back and go 13 today, but I'm watching. I'm listening, and I would continue to listen, and I won't totally close the door or anything if we get into that situation that you speak of. But again, what we were presented with, and again, the actuary terms weren't part of the first time we did this.
No, but maybe I can help you a little bit. As I said some time ago, actuarians work on probabilities. So they can never tell you they know. But probabilities are called probabilities because they are very probable. And they research all kinds of items, how old people, how old we will get, because we're all getting, I don't want to say we're all, but people are living longer. That's the right way to say it. So that makes a number change because there's more expense involved with a person in their older years, and the more older years they are more expenses. But they can't tell you that next year it's going to be this amount, or the next year it's going to be that amount. So, and they go into all kinds of variables and all kinds of probabilities. So you can never ask an actuarian for a definitive answer and get one, because they're dealing with probabilities. But they're pretty damn good with what they do, and that's why people pay them to do it, because they take a lot into account. Is it down to the dollar or the $100 or the $1 million? Nobody knows until we get there. But we know it's going to be in what they are saying, the reasons for it costing more is happening. We've seen it for the last 15 years, and things keep going up at 15, 20% a year in healthcare. So it's coming. I couldn't tell you whether it's 52 million or 82 million, but I can tell you it's a big number and it's coming. And so I'm just trying to get you to understand that actuarians, they can't tell you, this is definitive, because they're dealing with probabilities. So but again, those probabilities generally work out to what they reasonably expect.
And I probably struggle with the abstractness of the numbers. And again, I go back to, we didn't hear even the abstractness of the numbers when this first came up. We heard it after we approved what we approved. But there's also the probability that I don't understand why that's not taken into account, is the fact that the numbers that were here the first time we voted are of this small group of retirees is less now than when we first voted. And the probability is, not to jinx anybody, but the probability is there's going to be some more fading in the next year. And that's why I was asking if we could get a number in a year and see how this really looked with the number of these folks that are passing on. And again, that's not what I'm looking to do. But so again, I'm willing to look at things as it goes and reconsider it, but I don't know that tonight's the night.
No, I'm not saying tonight. What we would vote on tonight is to reconsider it at the next meeting. And again, you will have the ability to say, no, I'm still not ready, but we would have, just all the numbers and all the people and all the staff here to go through it again and see if anybody is going to change their mind. But if the further out all of this stuff is, the more expensive it gets. Like compound interest, you do good when you put it out and start from a point. So if we do decide to put a cap on it, that's going to have a great effect from this point forward, rather than waiting 10 years or whatever, and then put it on. It's a much less effect. And the way I look at it, we're really doing right by the staff, although they probably won't consider it that way, because this is unsustainable. It is just unsustainable the way it's there now. Looking at those numbers, even if the numbers are far less than what they've presented, it's still going to basically bankrupt the city. Or nobody gets any health care or something like that, and that isn't where I want to go. So I just would ask somebody to make that Rule 13. It's not looking like it's going to happen, but I think we'll regret it in the future. We have an opportunity now to stop this thing at the beginning or revise it, and it's just going to get harder and harder to do. Anybody else want to speak? I will ask this one more time, just Rule 13 for the next meeting, and we'll get to discuss it in detail with the experts that we have and that are out there, and now we know more of the questions to ask. And I agree with you. The first time, I don't know what it was $54,000. Nobody thought that was a problem. Well, it wasn't until it turned into $54 million. And I don't know how it got that way, and maybe that could be researched too, but that's where it is.
I can't do it until, I cannot do it at this point. And I'm not saying I'll never do it, but I cannot do it at this point.
I guess there's not much more I can say.
I did want to clarify. I think the first time around when we voted on it, I think we didn't have those numbers because if I remember right, I think it was advisability that staff was asking for. So they weren't really prepared, and then we just kind of voted. So they didn't really have those numbers. And so I know it's crappy that we didn't have those numbers ahead of time, but now that we do, yeah, I just hope that we would look at them and make responsible decisions.
One thing about it is it's this gas fee thing, which is relatively new, and I don't think I'm guessing that they weren't even looking at that part. They were looking at the numbers that they are used to dealing with. But whatever, it was wrong. And now we have the right numbers, and the numbers are terrible. I've said all I can say, I guess, but I think we're making a terrible mistake, and in the future, we'll all look back and say, yeah. Okay. We did.